The tension in the federal congressional hearing room was electric. Judge Samuel Alito sat at the witness table, his black robes draped behind him, a slight smirk on his weathered face. He had just dismissed Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's question about judicial ethics with a wave, as if swatting away an annoying fly. "Congresswoman," he said condescendingly, "perhaps you should focus on issues you actually understand." The room fell silent. Liberal lawmakers shifted uncomfortably. Conservative members leaned back with satisfied grins. Alito's smirk widened, believing he had put the young black congresswoman from Texas in her place. But what happened next would change everything. Jasmine Crockett slowly stood, her burgundy blazer perfectly pressed, her natural hair styled in an elegant twist. Her dark eyes locked onto Alito's with laser focus. The slight tremor in her voice was gone, replaced by a steely resolve that made seasoned politicians take notice. "Your Honor," she began, her voice carrying across the silent chamber, "I think it's time we talked about what I actually understand." The hearing room suddenly felt like a boxing ring. At 74, Alito had spent decades on the highest court, accustomed to deference. He had testified before Congress multiple times, always controlling the narrative. Crockett, at 43, was new to Washington's power games, but had cut her teeth as a civil rights lawyer in Dallas, defending those who couldn't defend themselves. Every instinct told her this was her chance to make history. Alito's smirk faded as he noticed the shift in Crockett's posture. The murmurs in the gallery died, even court reporters stopped typing. This wasn't just another hearing. It was about to become a defining moment, replayed on news programs for weeks, shared millions of times online, remembered as the day a young congresswoman reminded a powerful judge that in America, no one is above accountability. The confrontation. Alito represented the old guard, Princeton and Yale, educated, nearly 2 decades on the Supreme Court, shaped by landmark rulings. But recent years had brought scrutiny and disclosed luxury trips with wealthy donors, questions about his wife's political activities, a growing sense he'd become too comfortable with power. Crockett embodied change. Born in St. Louis, she'd watched her community struggle with a justice system that failed people who looked like her. A public defender turned civil rights attorney, she'd won cases against police departments and corporations. Elected to Congress in 2022, she promised to bring that fighting spirit to Washington. For months, reports had raised ethical concerns about Supreme Court justices. Luxury vacations, undisclosed gifts, weak enforcement of ethics rules. Progressive activists demanded oversight. Conservatives dismissed it as political theater. The public's faith in the court was eroding. The turning point. Alito deflected questions with practiced ease, dismissing Crockett's inquiries about a luxury fishing trip with a billionaire who had cases before the court. "Perhaps you should focus on making laws rather than telling judges how to interpret them," he sneered. Crockett didn't flinch. She opened a folder and read from an ethics opinion Alito himself had written years earlier. Even the appearance of impropriety can undermine public confidence in the judiciary. Context matters, Alito snapped. "The context," Crockett shot back, "is that you held yourself to a higher standard 20 years ago. The context is you've taken hundreds of thousands in unreported gifts. The context is you think the rules don't apply to you." Alito's composure cracked. "I've been a judge longer than you've been a lawyer," he retorted, smirking. "Perhaps you should focus on issues you actually understand." The room froze. Crockett's response was lethal. "What I understand, Your Honor, is that I've spent 15 years fighting for justice in courtrooms. What I understand is that I've never had to explain to a client why I took luxury vacations with the opposing party." Her voice grew stronger. "What I understand is that when I was a public defender making $45,000 a year, I turned down a $500 gift card because it was a conflict. The lawyers I worked with wouldn't even accept lunch from someone who might appear in their courtroom." She stepped closer. "You mentioned I should focus on issues I understand. Let's talk about judicial ethics. Canon 2 requires avoiding impropriety. Canon 4 mandates financial disclosure. Canon 5 prohibits political activity." She held up a document. "Legal experts say you've violated all 3. Alito sputtered. "These are politically motivated attacks. Accountability isn't political," Crockett said. Ethics isn't political. Following the same rules as everyone else isn't political. The gallery erupted. A young civil rights lawyer stood and clapped. Others joined. Democratic lawmakers grinned. Republicans looked stunned. Alito sat shaken, his confidence shattered. The aftermath: by the time Crockett finished, the hearing room buzzed with energy. Within hours, clips of the exchange went viral. #Crockett vs. Alito trended. Legal analysts praised her preparation. Progressives hailed it as a watershed moment for accountability. "You seem to have forgotten the most basic principle of American justice," Crockett had said. "Equal justice under law, not for some, but for all. Power without accountability isn't justice. It's tyranny." The phrase became a rallying cry. Judicial ethics reform gained momentum. Crockett, once a freshman congresswoman, became a national figure. Alito retreated from public view, his reputation indelibly marked. Why it mattered: the confrontation was more than political theater. It was a generational clash over accountability. Crockett proved expertise and moral clarity could topple institutional arrogance. She showed that in America, no one, not even a Supreme Court justice, is above answering to the people they serve. Months later, law schools still dissected the exchange. Activists quoted Crockett's words. And ordinary Americans remembered the day a young black woman stood before power and demanded better. Democracy works when we pay attention, when we demand accountability, when we refuse to let power go unchecked. This was one such moment.